Dumbbell pullovers, one of my top 5 favorite exercises. I started doing this at age 14 when I wanted to expand my rib cage, and it worked. It gave me an awesome structure, and I started doing it when I was 14 because I knew I wasn't done growing yet. So I knew I still had the opportunity to shape my body a certain way. See, I was born with a small frame, small rib cage, and I knew I had to mutate myself if I wanted to look like I wanted to, and this is one of the exercises I used to do it. Now, what it developed for me was, yes, my lats. My lats are awesome. On stage, on the bodybuilding stage, my outer, the part of the lats that this exercise works is one of the best on stage every time. And then also it developed the serratus anterior, which is all these little muscles underneath my rib cage that looks really awesome. This is one of the 2 exercises I used to do it. Now, I get like this, look how I get into position. I put the weight on my leg like this, or I lift it like this from the side. One of those 2 different ways. And I lift it over my chest. Now, to give you an idea of how much weight I normally do on this, if I'm going really heavy, I like to do 120 pounds for about 12 reps. That's heavy. Most people don't do that with a deep stretch. But I always warm up a lot with this because this is an exercise that someone can easily get injured. They can hurt their neck, the top of their spine. They can hurt their rotator cuff, their shoulder, their chest, their lat, everything is very vulnerable. But if you warm up, then it's actually pretty safe. The biggest mistake I see is people bend their elbows a lot. And that also is dangerous because the heavier the weight is, the closer that gets to hitting your head. The other mistake I see people do, it's not a mistake, it's a matter of preference, is when they pull the weight up, they come far down like this. Now you're gonna get a better chest contraction, but now you've completely lost tension on every other muscle that you're working, which is not my intention. So what I like to do is I like to use this as a, what I call stretch position exercise. So I'll focus on getting a contraction with another exercise. I'm not worried about a contraction on this exercise, or at least the peak contraction position. I'm worried more about the stretch. So I come down, I suck a big amount of air in to fill my rib cage before I go down, and I hold the air because it's that stretch with the air in my rib cage that really expands it and stretches all the muscles, and then I lift up and I keep tension and I don't go up all the way, I stop right there. Now I can use my hips to cheat a little bit. I can thrust my hips a little bit if I need to get a little bit heavier weight, so long as I'm still doing it safely. Also, I notice people's position on the bench is always cattywampus. I like to get a little lower so that my head's fully supported and so that my neck is not up. I feel like if my neck and spine is straight, it's much safer. So this is what it looks like. Trevor, you can give any advice while I'm doing it.
How he's explaining it is perfect. You see where his chest comes out, and you see the difference where he was positioned the first time versus now. His chest will be popping out, but keeping that constant tension, specifically for these lats, is probably one of the best lat, and like we said, not just rib cage, but expanding your lats too. That's another portion of this. If you do it this way, you're causing the best of both worlds. However, that top part takes all the tension off your lats and causes your chest to engage fully and create a contraction on the chest. But again, when you're doing this for chest, only part of the motion is working the chest and it stops, and then the other part's working it again. So this exercise is probably one of the worst for chest in terms of actual building the chest. We should utilize it exactly how he says, and just doing it for keeping time under tension and stress always on the muscle here in the lat. You could utilize it for chest, but just for the pop, in which case he wouldn't go as far down. He would stop early on and only do the top portion of the movement, which would totally negate his lats.
Now, even though we're trying to keep our arms straight, which tries to take the triceps out of it, because you could turn this into a tricep exercise by bending the elbows, but I'm keeping my arms straight, my triceps still get their ass kicked. Like, I get a better tricep workout from straight arm pullovers than almost anything else. The deep muscle fiber stimulation is incredible, but that's because I also use heavier weight. You know, when I'm using 120 pounds, it absolutely fries every muscle. My lats are destroyed, my triceps are destroyed, and I'll actually use, when I use a lot of weight, I'll even bounce it off the floor. I'll actually treat this almost like a powerlifting exercise, because what I'm doing is when you put the muscle in the extreme stretch position, like right here at the bottom, you have an opportunity to activate the myotatic reflex, which is that you put your muscle in an emergency mode that sends a signal to your neurological system to contract the muscle. which means the muscle has an opportunity to contract harder than you can actually consciously contract. So you're consciously contracting, thinking, okay, I want to squeeze the muscle and contract it. But if you want to amplify that signal and contract the muscle, get another 15, 20% contraction, then you bounce it off the bottom. But keeping in mind that it's also dangerous. It's dangerous, but it's also the biggest opportunity you have for growth because of the intense muscle stimulation. This is what it looks like.
And to that too, what he said is on point. If you see guys like Johnny Jackson and Branch Warren train, they're bouncing it and they're using the same concept, but neither of these guys ever get injured in the gym. And one thing I had brought up in the beginning was in bodybuilding, the heavier you go, if you were to go slow and try and get that deep contraction and then exert up, that's what's going to cause the muscle to tear. Instantly it's going to tear. However, if you go down and utilize momentum, like we were saying with judo, boom, you're bouncing with gravity and using momentum. Same with the bench, bouncing it here. That takes that last extreme stretch and overload off the muscle, but you're keeping constant tension too. And the most important part for fast twitch fibers as well, and the overall size and bulk, is contraction or the eccentric part of the movement.